Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Amplifying Authenticity. Today's guest is Adam Guzman-Poole. He, him, author, relationship counselor, and founder of Lessons on Love. Adam's work brings together Indigenous wisdom, contemplative practices, psychology, and modern relationship work to explore one powerful idea: that healing ourselves and healing the world are deeply connected, which, as all of you know, with Us Squared, my original company, Understand Self, Unite Society, we have a lot of synergies. After nearly 2 decades apprenticing with spiritual teachers across the Americas and Asia, Adam's understanding of love and purpose transformed even more deeply through family and partnership. Today, he helps individuals and couples reconnect with themselves and each other through compassion, presence, and authentic relationship. In this conversation, we explore radical interconnectedness, healing through family and community, and why small acts of love may be one of the most powerful forces for change we have. Adam, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to Amplifying Authenticity.
Thank you, Megan. Such an honor to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to dive into this conversation. I want to start with a phrase that really sits at the center of your work. As we were doing some research and preparing for this, and also in our conversation to prep for the call, you talk about all my relations.
Yeah. So
What does that mean to you?
all my relations. Well, it's for me, all my relations. It's actually the dedication of my book. It's for all my relations, and it comes from a Lakota philosophy, which is, we are all connected. You and I, we are from different parts of the world, right? I'm here in Bali, Indonesia. You're over in the States. And still, we are connected. We are related in some way. We are related to each other. We're related to the earth. And it's this idea that there's this unifying web that connects us all together. In Bali, there's this beautiful philosophy about how do you bring things into balance in the world. It's called the Trihita Karana. So it's the 3 pathways to well-being. And so the idea is that if these 3 things are in balance, then life is good. So what are those 3 things? There are relationship to other people. There are relationship to the natural world. And there are relationship to the divinity, something bigger than ourselves, whatever you want to call it, God, spirit, source, whatever word works for you. And when those things are in balance, when those relationships are in harmony, then everything is in balance. Everything is beautiful. And so that to me is this idea that we're all related, right? And that when we can really bring this energy and this idea home, well, life is good. Life is happy. We're in balance. We're like the words that you have on the back of your wall. We're the change the world needs.
Yeah, I love that. And as you first started talking about that we are all connected, I had an amazing opportunity to celebrate our company's anniversary recently. And in the room, there were people that did not know each other. But throughout the conversation, we realized those 6 degrees of separation, right? Those, oh my gosh, I was at that conference, or oh my gosh, I have been in that organization, or I also go to that church, or I also do this, or oh my gosh, that's my favorite restaurant too. And when you first started talking about we're all connected, that was so clear in that room of how we're connected physically. And the other piece that resonated so much is how we're all connected spiritually, like you shared. And as you talked about the 3 different sources of where we make that connection, the one that I believe also could be added maybe, or maybe it's the umbrella that encompasses all of that, is our relationship to ourselves.
Yes, 100%.
Right?
And I think really that comes to that, it's that relationship with humans but ourselves, and like, who are we, the agent in those connections, right? And this kind of comes down to what you talked about in the beginning of this work, right? It's like, how are we going to treat the earth if we're not being kind to ourselves? You know, how are we going to treat our neighbor if we're constantly judging ourselves, right? So this, like, it's really this inner work that, you know, whatever we do within us, we're going to give outside.
Yeah. One of the other pieces that really touched me as we were speaking is your belief around family
Mm,
and the healing practices and how healing the family is one of the greatest ways to heal the world.
mm,
And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that, as whether it's relationships, romantic, friendship, family, but how those relationships are such powerful spaces for transformation.
yeah. So I don't know if I shared this story with you, but I love to share this story, and it's an ancient proverb, and it there's this old man, and he's very distraught, and he turns to this young man, and he said, you know, when I was younger, I sought to change the world, and that I couldn't do. So then I turned and I said, well, I'm going to try to change my nation, and he said, and that I couldn't do. So then I went and I tried to change my community, and still I couldn't even do that. So I tried to change my family. And now here I am, an old man. And I know that if I would have began and started to first change myself, then maybe, just maybe, I would have been able to change my family. Then my family, perhaps we would have been able to have this impact on our community. And our community would have had an impact on our nations and the world. And it's these circles of influence that we are really rippling on into the world. And if we look at, you know, organizations are this, you know, these great forces for change in this world. And the smallest and most intimate organization we have is the family unit. Like, this is an organization. It's people coming together, organizing with a purpose and their mission, and they're moving towards these things. And so if we want a good and happy world, well, start with your kids, right? It's like, if we take care of the kids, the future will take care of itself. But the question is, well, how are our relationships with our spouse? You know, if our relationship with our spouse isn't good, then the negativity is going to go out. If the relationship with ourselves isn't good, then we're going to, criticize. We're going to be hard on our kids, and then they're going to get that and then pass it on. It's just really this cycle. But on the flip side, if we're kind, if we're caring, if we're loving, if we're considerate, if we're constantly bringing out the best in those relationships with those closest to us, those ripples, outward, which is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. And when we talk about family, I think it's really important to share, and you mentioned this as well, but it's the idea that family is not necessarily just your blood family, right?
Hmm.
That your
Hmm.
family becomes who you bring into your inner circle, whether it's a spouse, a partner. Sometimes we have friend families, right? Like, I started talking about this very early with my son, that we have our blood family, we have our chosen family, and we have our friend family. And that all of those families are beautiful and amazing and important and create an impact in our life. And sometimes those families intersect, right?
Hmm.
I have some family members who are related to me by blood who are also friends. Sometimes they don't intersect, right?
Hmm.
And the most beautiful piece is when we take the opportunity to just appreciate every aspect of family and how
Hmm.
important that is.
Hmm.
Now, I know when we start thinking about trajectories and we start thinking about how we got to where we are here today, you just shared that proverb, and it made me think of a story that you shared with me earlier, in our pre conversation, about what you thought your trajectory was going to be. And then you met someone who became a part of your family and how your trajectory changed. Can
Hmm.
you share a little bit more? Am I giving you enough hints to
Yes,
tell
yeah,
you
yeah,
where
yeah. I
I'm
know, I
going
know,
with
I know
this?
exactly. I know
Okay.
exactly where you're going. And before we go there, I just want one small note on the family piece. I just like, I think it's really important, especially because we're talking about this wider conversation of change. And I think really the purpose of these relationships are grow our hearts bigger and bigger to encompass more love so that we can really see that everyone is part of our global family, right? When we talk about this
Love that.
interconnected web that we are part of. And family is a great place to do that, right? Because,
Mhm.
hey, there's a lot of people, you might not agree with everything that your
Oh,
spouse
goodness,
says. Yeah.
no.
You might not agree with everything your cousin says, your kid says, right? But can you still have respect, which is another aspect of love? Can you still respect them? Right? And imagine if we had that, and how does that respect extend outwards towards people that maybe they have a different religious belief? Maybe they have a different, the different way of looking at the world. Can you still respect them? Which is another expression of love. And so with that, it's like, it's a great opportunity to grow and stretch the muscle of love so that we can extend it out into the world. Now back to your story, or the story that you want to prime me to. So, um, I think for me, my journey into love, like the relationship piece, I guess it's like kind of a small two-part piece. And the first part was like, I had, in my relation, like, I was very, success oriented at first, right? I wanted to like, make my mark on the world and do things. But also that was actually coming from a deep place of lack, right? There was this feeling of not good enough, not, so I was looking outside the world to prove, and I was looking for achievements, whether it be through my business or work, and to be, successful in the eyes of the world. But really that there was a deep hurt there. And so that actually, when I realized what I was actually doing, and that like helped me turn within, right? Turn within to do the work within, to love within. And, I did that enough that eventually at one point, I met my wife, but I wasn't even expecting to be with my wife. So I was more likely to be a monk, and I was seriously considering being a monk, a deep spiritual journey. You said the thing like 20-year apprenticeship. And I was celibate for 7 years. And then I met my wife at this retreat center that I was living at. And, there was chemistry, there was energy, there was life, there was love. And, of course, what I did, what most people did do when life presents you a new opportunity, I wanted to run. And I probably did
Mhm.
while she was there, and we was trying to run away from this experience, even though like my heart knew that there was something here, there was something beautiful there. And eventually, there's this battle between the authentic self, I say, we're talking about the authentic self that knows what's right for you, that knows what's true for you and what's best for you. And then the ego self, the fear self, the smaller self that wants to keep us small and limited. Eventually, that part of me that was brighter, bigger, more expansive, more loving said yes and jumped into this relationship. And I'll tell you honestly, Megan, that wasn't like as like even though my authentic self knew that this was what I was supposed to do, it was that this was the place where to grow. And I'll say this, like your soul, let's say authentic self, soul, it's really the same thing for me. That part of you that knows, that part of us will always put us in uncomfortable situations because it wants us to grow. It wants to
Oh,
expand into our best, most beautiful, most expansive, loving, wonderful self. And so I was there 7 years a monk, and then all of a sudden, you think you're so peaceful, and then you have someone right beside you, like poking all your buttons of all these areas. And I was like, oh gosh, now here's the test, right? Here's the test. And
right.
that was the real spiritual growth is there. There's a Ram Dass, a beautiful teacher, 20th century. Um, he said, if you think you're enlightened, go home and spend a week with your family, right? It's like it brings up all the stuff. It brings up all the stuff because no one's there to poke you. And so that sort of like started me on that trajectory of like really working with, first it started with myself and that personal relationship, and then it expanded within my relationship with my wife, and then And that's since has expanded more to my relationship in the community. And you see the circles grow as we do that, right? So,
Right. I love that. I love that. And, with your work, Lessons on Love, what I also appreciate so much is that you don't romanticize love. Like you just said
mm,
it right now, like push the buttons, right? That love is not just about the beautiful, joyous moments. There's
mm,
also some hard parts that we have
mm,
to look at within love. And that sometimes that discomfort leads to more growth, right?
mm,
And I'm wondering if you can relate or if this is something that also comes to mind around this is how does the idea of perfectionism or
mm,
self-correction or inhibition play
mm,
into allowing yourself to lean into that authenticity or that authentic inner self?
mm. Yeah. Sorry. Um, can you say that question one more time? I think I got it, but I just want to make sure I got it completely right. Yeah. Sorry.
So it's kind of one of those pieces that when people ask you to repeat something, you're like, oh, I don't know if I can because it's not written down, but I go with what I'm thinking. So
Yeah.
it's the idea of, I believe that when we talk about family, right, we talk about
Mm,
pushing the buttons. And sometimes as people, we try so hard to be perfect,
hmm
right? We try so hard to be exactly what others want us to be, and
hmm
we self-correct and we criticize ourselves. We have that imposter syndrome. I'm wondering how breaking through that, through those family push button moments. Do you
Yes.
see that that helps break through some of that imposter syndrome or that self-worth?
Yeah, 100%. Well, one of the things that so I'm a recovering perfectionist, so it's I know this all too well, right? The inner critic
Mhm.
is loud, was loud in me growing up, so I know that very well and work with it with people a lot. And for me, when we get these buttons pushed, right? You know, there's that part of us that is that like we're talking about this authentic self, right? This is the soul self, which actually at its core is perfect. It doesn't need like we're already perfect, whole, complete, just as we are, right?
Mhm.
There is there's this beautiful story that it's comes from Thailand, and there is this epic war that is happening, and there is this giant golden Buddha in the middle of the field, and this is like so big, 5 tons golden Buddha, and this warring army comes in, and the villagers are coming, and they're thinking, "Oh gosh, we got to protect the Buddha." So they start putting the mud on top of it to protect it and keep it safe. And the invaders come in and they see that, oh, it's just a mud statue of Buddha, and they just leave it there. Nothing happens. Now, it was happened for hundreds of years. This is a true story that this statue was covered in mud. No one knew about it until one day they were actually moving it with a crane to move it to another temple, and a little piece of it chipped. And then all of a sudden, one of the monks looked in and he saw this like shining ray. And he's like, "What is that?" And he started breaking it open. And all of a sudden, there was like this shimmering gold. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, the statue is beautiful. It's a golden Buddha." And so here's the thing, it's like each of us at our core, we're this golden Buddha, right? We're this beautiful essence, untouched, unfazed by life. Yet through the conditions of life, through different challenges, we've put on this mud to protect ourselves. Maybe it was at something in childhood. We put it on so that, we don't want to be seen. We don't want to be safe. And what happens a lot of times, we start identifying with the mud and like, oh, this is the mud, is the me. And this is the like, and so we'll identify with the mud, and that's where the perfectionism comes in. It's like, oh, I'm the mud. That's who I am, right? But when you realize it's really easy to be authentic when you're like, wow, oh, here's a mistake. It's just some mud, right? But that's not who I am. So it's like when we can really remember that authentic self of who we actually are, then it's so easy to share all these things. And we realize, oh yeah, like, okay, I was a jerk yesterday with my kid. Or, oh, I was, it's like, okay, that's not who I am. right? It's like
Right.
that was a moment, right? And
Hmm.
that's something really important that, I mean, I'll say I do this with my wife all the time, like anytime. Like I was like, if I'm like off center and maybe I was tired or this and that, and I lose my cool, and I'm like, sorry, sweetie, that's not me. And it's literally like, it's like differentiating like between it. And it doesn't, I'm not saying don't bypass it, don't acknowledge it, it's just don't like, we don't need to like, it's like we all have a shadow, but we're not our shadow, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So powerful. And one of the things that we focus on a lot and that I specifically talk about a lot is how we can prepare the environment to receive the authenticity of those around us.
Mm,
Right. And
mm,
I'm wondering if you have any insights on that of how we can help that monk chip away the mud, right? How we
mm,
can help others, right? If we are able to see our inner light
mm,
and that shows as an example for others, are there other things that we can do? Or, I mean, I can share some of the pieces we do is sharing
mm,
your own vulnerability, right?
uh-huh,
I know that when I share my vulnerability with my son, when I admit mistakes, when I tell him
mm,
I don't know, when I admit I'm wrong,
mm,
that tells him that it's okay to do that. Right.
mm,
So
mm,
that's with my son. With our clients, we do similar things. I talk about bias a lot and I
mm,
share my own biases from the environment I was raised in to say, hey, look, I do this work day in and day out and I have biases. So let's talk about them openly so we can figure out how to work through them. Right.
mm, mm.
Do you have any tidbits for people listening of how we can prepare environments for others in our presence to be their authentic self?
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And I love the work that you're doing. And I think, you know, it's so helpful, like you said, just to share. Like when you share that space, like literally, like when you there's I can't remember who says it exactly, but it's mindfulness teacher. It says when you hide your shame, it goes to the basement and lifts weights, right? And it's like
Mm,
it's like it gets stronger. But when you can voice something and put it out in the room, it's not it's less heavy, right? It's less, it gets air, it can move through. So that's one way, and the way that you're doing, and I think it's amazing. And I think there's two things that we can do really helpfully. And first, it really comes back to the self when you're talking about helping chip away that part.
mm,
And so, like, how can we connect to that authentic self? And, I'm coming from, you know, 20 years of meditation. And so I'm going to recommend that. It's like, because it's like literally like coming within yourself, right? Because when we look at, um, the process of meditation, it's a very powerful tool to actually connect with who we actually are. So, for example, they've done a lot of research in neuroscience, and they've been able to pinpoint where different emotions are. You can pinpoint, pain. You can pinpoint anger. There's like that point in the brain. That's where that is. But they can't pinpoint consciousness. They don't know who's the one watching. Like they have no idea who is that one watching that there is pain, right? There is a part of us that can see thoughts floating by. There's a part of us that says, oh, those are the thoughts floating by. And this is cognitive behavioral therapy. You're just noticing the thoughts, you're seeing them, but you're not the thoughts. You can choose different thoughts, but who's the one choosing? Right.
mm,
And so that's something really powerful to see is like, oh, okay, there's someone in there. Who is that someone? That's your authentic soul. That's who you really are. And it's beyond, this, meat body or whatever, beyond my name, beyond this thing. And this is where we can, we're talking about like growing these circles of love. And it's like when we can realize that, like, oh, I'm more than just this body. I'm more than just this skin. So this person is more than just this body. They're more than just these patterns. They're more than, so then our love can grow. And that environment is, is more prepared for that. So meditation, hands down, I think, and just like taking moments. So like this, like, I mean, I do recommend a morning practice, but even just taking moments just to, be in your body, take a few deep breaths. And, you're talking about reducing bias. There's a lot of research around that, even just mindfulness of just like deep breaths, breathing for like, I think it's 2 minutes. They did research on it for 2 minutes. It like
Okay.
reduces bias by like 30%, right? Because someone's
Mm,
present, right? Someone's actually present. And it's not the automatic schematas that they've been programmed through their upbringing, because we're actually here. We're in the
right.
moment, right? We're in the moment and we're seeing, oh, this is Megan. This is what, and then when we're having this conversation, but we're not looking through it through the past. Right. And that's where automatic judgments come up, is we're looking at them through our past judgments, which are built on society. And anyway, sorry, I'm talking a lot, so I'm going to pass it back to you. Yeah.
No, 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 that's great. And you're speaking a lot of similar language that we use as well. I mean, when we're looking at research specifically, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, it's by the age of 12. All of our
Mhm.
implicit biases are formed. Those
Mhm.
initial synapses and connections in our brains are formed by the age of 12.
Mhm.
So most of our listeners are above the age of 12, right? I think all of them are, at
Mhm.
least, that have self identified. So we know that all of us as adults have those first thoughts. They're embedded. It's what was taught to us at a very young age, whether consciously or unconsciously, because we learn not only by what we see, but also what we don't see, right? What
Mhm.
we hear and what we don't hear. Because when we don't hear a certain perspective or we don't hear certain stories, we think that they don't exist. So
Mhm.
it's just as important to talk about things, because then you're showing that it exists in the world. And I
Mhm.
think that's critical.
Mhm.
Um, One thing that another piece that you talk about, and I can't remember exactly where I saw this, whether it was on in your book or, but you talk about the 5 pathways to love.
Yes. Yeah. So,
Can you share a little bit more about that?
yeah. So the five pathways is a framework that I use in my counseling and uh, coaching and therapeutic practice. And it's this gateway of like, how do we like create love in our lives? It's sort of like a map, right?
Okay.
And so it's kind of like a Venn diagram of these four things. You have these four interconnections. So the first one we've talked about, or we've talked about two particularly, which is ourself. And
Okay.
so that's us. Like we can't love another if we're not bringing love into our own lives, right? And then the second one is, the other, right? Other people. So those are our close relationships. Those are our neighbors. Those are enemies, if you have them. That's one, those are two of the pathways. And the other is work, right? We spend, so much of our life is in work, right? But can we find love there? So many people don't love their jobs, but can they still find meaning in their work? So, and I'm of the belief that whatever you're doing, it's not like what you do, it's how you do it, right? That really makes a difference. And some people, you may be called to leave your job, and that's great. Some people don't have that luxury, right? And so just knowing that how you do something, you can find love in whatever you're doing. So finding love in work is the other pathway. The other one that a lot of people have a big what most of us have a hard time with is the one love and challenges. Can we be in the face of the most challenging situation and still find love? We look to people like Viktor Frankl, in concentration camp, right? And in the face of despair, this man found love. He saw the challenge because he looked at the challenge not as something that was something to be pushed away. He said that this is a gateway to my growth. So he leaned in, and that brought out the best within him. And I said, love is always going to bring out the best in us. And so these are these four pathways. They all intersect. And the fifth pathway is the circle that's kind of holding it all. And this is, with my, big spiritual foundation is like, it's the sacred. It's this thing that is bigger than us. Call it call it life, call it love, call it God, call it the universe, whatever you want to call it. There's something that's bigger than us that is holding us. That that is like, and when we can kind of like, even within love of self, within love of others, within love of the challenges, this thing of the sacred is that container for it all. And so for me, especially in our modern world, which is so I think we're kind of afraid of religion, organized religion, what it's done. We're sometimes afraid of talking about these out of the world things. We're very science based, and don't get me wrong. I study degree in psychology. I know what, like, I like know this. I love science, but it can only, it's only understanding a few. It's not, it's only got part of the picture, right? So we're underusing this, I guess this powerful resource that's at our capacity. With whatever we need, we can lean into it, And I mean, I'll look to, like, I know you're a fan of Gandhi. You have be the change you see in the world, right? Gandhi, the very first thing that he did, the very first thing that he did after he came to India, he did this 8 month tour, traveled all around India, and then he saw all the chaos in India after he came in from South Africa. And he was there, and everyone's like, and he was so upset. He was so upset by what was going on in his country. He had been gone for almost 20 years, and he had saw that the British people had taken the people's self-respect. Even the Indian people had lost their self-respect, and he was angry. Like, he like literally, like, he like yelled at all these people at this big event, and Indians, British, and all his activist friends kind of came together, and they said, okay, let's act now. Let's create a protest now. Let's create a protest now. And Gandhi was there, and he went into silence, which was a practice that he had developed while he was in South Africa, developing, satyagraha and what he was doing there. And looking within, he said, the very first thing that he did was he went and he left and he built a spiritual community because, like, grounded in these principles in this sanctuary, because he realized that he needed to be in an environment, and we're talking about environment again, right, Megan? He needed to be in an environment that would nurture the kind of person that he needed to be that light in the world. And he said, this is a big problem. And he says, if there's anger within me, I'm not going to be able to do this, right? So he had to go within, and he had to create that environment, and so that he could be that force for change. Yeah. I can't remember what the
And I
question
think,
was.
no, but I think that leads into the idea it goes back to relationships as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
because his wife was a phenomenal part of his movement and
Mm-hmm.
of all of the pieces that he came together with. And I saw one of the most poignant kind of images and just exhibits around Gandhi and his wife actually at Morehouse. I did a college tour with my son, and at Morehouse they had two busts, one of Gandhi and one of his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And the bust of Gandhi had very large ears, and his wife's ears were covered. And Gandhi's ears were closed, and his wife's eyes were open. And it was just the idea that his wife was the vision,
Mm-hmm.
and she shared, and Gandhi listened.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't look at the world through what he saw because there was so much anger and hatred and division. He looked through the world of what he heard and what he felt.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just such a strong depiction because I had always heard the story that his wife was so pivotal in the work that he did. I had always heard that, but that image of the two was just so prolific to me. And I think it's important because it goes back to the idea of the importance of relationships and
Mm-hmm.
how I believe that all of us have everything within us to do what we need to do. We
Yeah.
are who we are meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
And we become stronger when we combine that with those we love, care, and respect for. When we
Mm-hmm.
come together, right? It's the old adage of if you want to go faster, go alone. If you want to go further, go together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as a society, yes, one person can do things pretty quickly, but it's going to go away the very next day. But as a society, if we work together and we go together, we will make more monumental, long lasting, sustainable change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
so beautiful. Yeah. Brought me to tears as you were talking, telling that image. I could just feel it, right? And it's just, we are so much, we need to lean in on each other, right?
Yeah.
It's that relationship of where we, we are stronger together, 100%.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Mm.
it doesn't mean that you have to be together with people who are 100% aligned with every facet of yourself. Because in reality, we become stronger when we have different opinions in our circle, when we
Mm.
are able to lean in and have those difficult conversations and learn about different experiences that maybe we have not had ourselves.
Mm.
Because it's important to understand that the world is so much larger than any one person can see, right? It's that greater being of, as you call the fifth
Yeah.
piece, right? Of that outer dimension. Like there
Mm-hmm.
is something so much larger than all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that is that you believe in, there is something larger than all of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's so critical.
Mm-hmm.
One of the
Yeah.
questions I ask every person on our guest, Adam, and I'd love to hear your story. What is your why?
Mm.
Why do you do what you do? Why are you here right now? Why are you sharing this message with us?
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. I love the why. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's to, well, there's two parts. There's two parts to it. And for me, the ultimate why is to like kind of remember and reunite with that big thing that we're talking about. And that's a lot in different, ancient philosophies is about, I really like to see that there's this beautiful sun and we are this ray of that sun. And it's sort of like reconnecting with that energy, remembering that rayness. And so for me, it's really, remembering that ray of who I am and what I'm here to do. And to, at the end of the day, it's like to help us remember what is sacred, right? And to it's like I think that's something that's being kind of forgotten a lot in our material world. We've forgotten that there's something really precious, something, and if for me, it's to help people remember that sacred, remember their light within so that they can go back home to that, sun that they are and part of.
Love that. Can you share a story or an example of someone that you have worked with or someone that you've had a connection with that you have helped them return to that inner
Mm,
sun?
yeah, yeah. I love that inner sun. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking right now of comes to mind is this mom, very busy, very achievement oriented, but also had really caring. And we talked about that perfectionist, like wanting to do everything right by the book and this thing. It's a very stressful way to live, right? Like that, to be going like this. And so when we were working together, she came and with all this stress and it wasn't actually, it was actually that stress was going out into her partnership, right? Just like being overly critical of that person beside them and being that because we give what we have inside, right? So when they originally came to me was to work on this thing, but what did we do? We actually worked with the self, right? And so
Mm.
it's really beautiful just to see the process of, this woman, taking time and, busy mom, a lot of kids, but still taking like 1 minute meditation, just to go within, get grounded, reconnect with that light, right? And what happens in that is like, relationships start to get healed, and understanding, right? Because when you're less judgmental on yourself, when you're less harsh on yourself, you're going to be kinder, more caring, more authentic, more loving to those around you. And that's what she experienced. And so that's, I mean, that work lights me up because it's like what we were saying, right? If there's the organization shifting and growing and those circles of love keep expanding. Yeah.
Love that. Love
Mm.
that. If someone wants to build a healthier relationship, where do you recommend that they begin?
Mm. Yeah. Well, I I actually, so I have the five pathways, but I also there's like three pathways that I really recommend. And this the first, it's with your source, right? That connection, because whatever source is to you, we just talked about the soul, so the golden Buddha, talk about your
Mhm.
source essence, like connect to that part of you that is beyond those, the fragments, beyond, like, if there's, like we talked about, the clouds, or the thoughts are clouds floating in the sky, you're the mountain. So like you're that
Mm.
mountain, that soul self, your higher self, whatever you want to say. So that's, for me, it's like connecting to that part of you that is all big, all expansive, that no matter what gets thrown at you, that gives you strength, stability, sturdiness during challenges. So finding connection with that and then moving through is like, then it's like when that connection is strong, you're better able to like have that self-love, self-care, self-compassion, right? Because we have different parts of us, there's like, I might have a 4-year-old part or a 13-year-old part that's been hurt, that's been, challenged. But if I can like take a step back, connect to that, authentic source self, I'm able to hold space for this part. I'm able to be that present witness that part of me that needed to have, that maybe wasn't there when my upbringing. Because a lot of times that's what you'll see, right? When these things that we're acting out, they've just been, those first 12 years, right? But that's where the majority of them happen. And I'd say in the first, like, that beginning part, we can get them afterwards through different traumas, right? But like a lot of times we're just acting out these old stories. And so when we can
Mm.
work with these two things, right? Like our biggest, highest self, the divine, whatever you want to call it, and then work with that, that us, that those different parts of ourselves, then we're able to hold it. And that expands into every relationship you see.
I love that. So, really finding and honoring our inner golden Buddha.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why, like, the first thing that I always recommend is like go to that meditation, right? Just that stillness within, because that helps us connect to that golden Buddha. Because we're not outside, right? It's like we're not out, we're bringing our attention within, right?
Love that. Adam, thank you so much for this conversation. I've reflected quite a bit. I'm sure you've seen my eyes. My eyes tell me where I'm going and where I'm
Mm,
thinking. And you've reminded not only me, but our audience that what happens in our life, that healing does not happen in just grand gestures, right? It's not always going for outside support, whether it's medication, therapy, all of those things are beneficial. And sometimes that meditation is even more impactful for spiritual breakthroughs, for those moments of realization. And how we listen, how we soften, how we love each other every day is the biggest impact.
mm, mm.
For those listening, you can learn more about Adam's work through Lessons on Love, connect with him online, explore his books and teachings, and access his free resource that he's offering to us in the show notes. Do you want to share a little bit more about the resource you'll be offering our
Yeah. Yeah.
listeners?
So, I mean, we shared a lot of stories today, and I really believe that, and this is what you talked about, the power of sharing stories, right? Stories really have the power to transform us. And so I have, 5 transformational stories that are actually take you through a guide way through those 5 pathways to love, to, loving yourself more, loving others, finding that, bringing love really to every area of your life. So that's lessonsonlove.org/gift. And So lessonsonlove.org/gift. And there's that beautiful gift for you.
Wonderful. And we'll also link that in the show notes. So thank you so much, Adam. Um, Again, I just want to share my gratitude. And I want to remind everyone who's listening, if this episode reminded you that healing begins closer to home than we often think, I hope you carry that with you.
Mm,
I hope that you acknowledge the beauty of your own inner golden Buddha. And that is a story that I will definitely remember. So thank you, Adam, for that. I'm
thank
Megan
you.
Fucciarelli, and until next time, keep choosing compassion, nurturing connection, and amplifying authenticity in how you love and how you live.